Game week 6 was a stunning wake-up call for FPL managers, with the wildcards ending up a busted flush and points farmer Palmer proving the canary in the coal mine, signifying to everyone that the serious business of FPL management is well and truly underway. What was most impactful about Cole the Goals' 4th finish salvo is that it came in a game week where so many other big names failed to fire. Arsenal's much vaunted defence conceded twice. Luis Diaz did nothing. Saka did nothing. Youngmin's son was injured. Alexander Isak was injured. Eze blanked. Man City conceded. Liverpool conceded. And Bruno Fernandes was sent off. Later, rescinded. And to top it all off, the Norse force was successfully shackled by Big Dan Burn. For this to happen in any game week would be huge. For it to happen in a game week where so many wildcarded, and so many of those wildcarders went without Palmer, meant the impact was even greater for those who possess his unique abilities. We all expected a paradigm shift in game week 6, but very few expected it to shake down quite the way it has. For my team, game week 6 was an unmitigated disaster. After I claimed to have their favour last week, those FPL gods have struck me down. First in destroying my game week, and secondly by inflicting me with the dreaded lurgy. Indeed, the highlight of my game week was a player I don't own, scoring against a defender that I do. Last week I told those wildcarders to invest in Wolves, because they can provide the players best suited to be substitutes until that second wildcard, which would enable the game week 6 wildcarders to focus their transfers on high impact players. Away at Anfield, Ryan Aitnori proved my analysis correct. Jock and Jeeves told me he thought I'd lost the plot when I suggested the Wolves lads, but I suspect you'll start seeing them feature more prominently in analysis elsewhere now their fixtures are starting to turn. But yes, some insignificant bragging rights for last week's video was the highlight of my game week, which just goes to show how diabolical my team's performance was. 3 returns I got. 3 dismal returns. A final game week score of just 33 points. My second highest scorer left on the bench. 3 players with 1 solitary point. 2 bonus points lost 24 hours after the game finished. It was dismal, and while the last couple of game weeks of underperformance could somehow be sugar-coated, there's no denying that this game week could prove the decisive blow in my quest to become this season's world #1. I was even outscored by Grinchy Vot. That's how bad things got. Last week I took the 4-point hit, transferring Konsa, Jota, Ahmad and Isak to Gabriel, Mbeumo, Diaz and Wood. Inevitably, game week 6 was the game week where Jota finally outscored Diaz. And though I ultimately broke even with my transfers, neither gaining nor losing any points, ultimately I should have listened to King Ding. He told me not to bother taking the hit, but by last Sunday night I was in a blind state of panic, fearing going without Diaz for another game week. I hoped fortune would favour the brave, but instead it's another self-inflicted mistake by this old fool who simply will not learn the lessons of his own past success. In my entire FPL career, I've played the King Ding style just once. In that season, my overall ranking was 9,394 and I won the League of Gentlemen at a canter. Yet here we are, 3 years later, and again I'm falling back into those old losing habits. Ultimately, that makes it 5 failed transfers out of 6 this season, with only Mbeumo offering my team any sort of points return after I've brought him in. Mooney's dropped, Pedro crocked, now Diaz, Gabriel and Wood, they failed to produce the goods. So here I am, 700,000 places away from the ultimate goal, 32 points further away from the top of the world's greatest mini-league, and with only one free transfer to turn the tide. For me, it's likely to be Eze or Joao Pedro out, but replacements are thin on the ground with only one free transfer. One player I can confirm will not be coming in is of course Ben Brereton Diaz, who in addition to his lifetime ban from Geord's Lords, this game week he extended his record as the biggest loser in Premier League history. If I do sell Joao Pedro, the reactionary move would be to bring in Delap, who scored twice in the last game week and has a nice run of fixtures. However, that transfer feels a bit like signing Muniz and then Joao Pedro and then Chris Wood all over again. Then of course there is Jørgen Strand Larsen, who I recommended to the game week 6 wildcarders. Though with my wildcard plan for game week 12, perhaps I can afford to think a little more short term, so maybe it won't be him. However, the spicy side of Laws feels like making that transfer in the hope it pays off, just so I can carry on proclaiming myself as some sort of FPL genius. So selling Joao Pedro for Strand Larsen is very tempting. They don't call me Andy Einstein for nothing. That being said, replacements for Joao Pedro are limited, so perhaps selling Eze would make more sense given that it would free up a bit more money in the bank. Replacements for Eze are a bit easier. There's Ian Form McNeil with his lovely run of fixtures coming up, but he has a guaranteed blank this weekend against Newcastle, so it seems a bit daft to bring him in this game week. There's Madueke, but Chelsea's good fixtures are over, so bringing in one of their attackers, yes, even him, is a mistake in the medium term. The optimum strategy for Chelsea is waiting until that game week 12 wildcard. Brennan Johnson and Kulusevski look good to cover that midfield until that wildcard. However, you simply can't play Man United every week, which is a shame because they're absolutely terrible. You need more than a stubbly beard and a shiny bald head to excel in football management. And it's why Erik ten Hag is such a failure and why I still have a fighting chance of becoming the world #1. I would even go so far as to say that I will win FPL before Erik ten Hag wins another trophy at Man United. What a miserable crap manager ten Hag is. Wanker. But yeah, you can't play Man United every week, so maybe I'll have to look elsewhere. Harvey Barnes is in great form and seems to have cemented his place, but am I using my Newcastle bias to talk me into another bad transfer? The outside pick of Mavididi has 2 goals in 3 games, and he has a dream upcoming run featuring Bournemouth, Southampton, Ipswich, Forest and Man United. You simply won't get a nicer fixture run than that. And he's only 5.3 million. But the big question is my appetite for risk, given my transfer tragedies so far. Then, of course, there is Manchester City. Gundogan has done it before, and with Rodri and De Bruyne out, he should come to the forefront of that midfield attack. Grealish, Doku and Bernardo Silva all have inconsistent haul potential, but should they get the minutes over the next 5 fixtures, they could absolutely explode. But the one I like from City, given that I can't afford Phil Foden, is the exciting Savinho. And after Black Box has mocked my suggestion he'd be a worthy punt, I'm tempted to get him in just to prove us wrong. If there's one thing I excel at, it's creating a narrative in my own head and convincing myself that that is the inevitable reality. And I have always been one to rise to the bait. Already I can hear Grinchy Vot laughing at how rattled I am, but I can also hear the true visionary Kevin Keegan saying we should all be dreamers at heart. Can Savinho, with a likely 3 or 4 starts in the next 5 fixtures, outscore the rest of the Eze replacement options? Part of me is so tempted to find out. All I know is that I need to get this one right, because never mind the world #1, I'm not even in the world #1 over 1 million. In focusing so much on potential wildcards for others, I've lost sight of what really matters. Having banter with my mates and winning the world's greatest mini-league. A task that grew much harder after game week 6. I secured the 4th lowest points in the division and I fell 6 places. I'm now only a point ahead of Mighty Mouse and I've got previous winners The Ox, Dan Gestoso Cabezas and Jock and Jeeves hot on my tail. Although I do hold a wild card in hand over all 3 of those. What was incredible this game week was to see Jock and Jeeves activate his wild card and yet still eschew the irresistible power of the Norse Force. He must have known HAALAND would once again fail against Big Dan Burn. But now starts that run of games in which the Manchester City striker could single-handedly end Jeeves' season. I can't help but think that the Townhead gunner has made a massive mistake with his wild card. Triple Arsenal and triple Chelsea will be good for 1, maybe 2 more game weeks, but then that fixture swing is severe. I do love his Foden gamble, and Foden will likely feature more prominently in the coming game weeks, but I also feel it won't be too long until the rap Rob Roy once again succumbs to his transfer hit addiction. That being said, I don't want to focus too much on what's behind me because I need to keep my eyes on the prize. And ahead of me, all I see are red arrows. Between myself in 10th and the 5th place go-karting, 5 out of 6 managers dropped in the table, with only the wild card in Ginger Ben rising in the ranks. Now Ginger Ben, he is one of Tommy Template's most ardent followers, but yet he showed the wider FPL world how to play the game in the modern era this week, using the advice of the content creators to craft his squad, and then gambling on 2 or 3 major changes. For the Mac and Messiah, that came in the form of excluding any sort of quality on his bench in order to squeeze quarter-century Cole into his starting 11. Whether his high-risk, high-reward squad proves sustainable in the long term remains to be seen. But he's lopped almost a $250,000 off his overall ranking and he's risen 3 places in the table, so it's very much a promising start. The big riser in the table this week was King Ding, who climbed 7 places in the table after a monster 81-point game week, with Palmer, Salah and Watkins his major weapons. And what's ominous for the rest of the gents is the King has crept into this position without anybody even really noticing. And unlike those 3 inexperienced gents ahead of him, the King still has every single chip to play. And this is just what the sensei of squad selection does. He's FPL's Mark Selby, constantly putting you in the places you don't want to go, and then grinding you down game week after game week until you can resist his power no more. Where most managers would make a transfer, the King puts in Harwood Bellis for 7 points. Where people knee-jerk to Arsenal, the King trusts in the firepower he already possesses. You won't see spectacular punts and crowd-pleasing kamikaze choices from Dinger, just top quality FPL management. You see, King Ding doesn't win game weeks, he wins titles. And that is the terrifying prospect for those 3 gentlemen ahead of him. Between the 3 of them, Wildman Whitfield, Iceman Newton and Gladiator Glenn have just 2 top 1 million places ever. They don't have the experience, they don't have the pedigree, they don't have the chips. All they have is a bright start and the right premiums so far. But Wildman Whitfield in 3rd, he has 3 finishes outside 3 million in the last 4 years. Iceman Newton in 2nd, he always starts well and then he gets bored halfway through the season and fades away to nothing. What they are on right now is a hot streak, but what will they do when the winter chill kicks in? Will they have the minerals to maintain their excellent start? I just don't think so, and it's up to them to prove me wrong. The Gladiator, he is starting to do just that. He's showing more nous than I originally gave him credit for. Abandoning Salah and Haaland in game week 3 was quite the ballsy move. Some would even say it was a big balls call. And it's one that's paid off in spectacular fashion so far. In game week 3, Salah and Haaland went big, but so too did the Gladiators Palmer, Diaz and Mbeumo. In game week 4, Haaland scored twice, so too did the Gladiators Watkins. In game week 5, Haaland and Salah got a goal and assist between them. The Gladiators Diaz and Son doubled that total. And now in game week 6, Palmer and Watkins have slaughtered the two biggest names in the game. Gladiator Glenn is showing the world a different way to play FPL, and he's almost pulling it off in spectacular fashion. Almost. The only problem he has is that he is showcasing some spectacular points dodging when it comes to captaincy. When Diaz got 15 points, he captained 6-point Palmer. When Watkins got 13 points, he captained 3-point Palmer. When Diaz got 16 points, he captained 8-point Palmer. And now, of all the game weeks to do it in, he's stripped 25-point Palmer of the captaincy and give it to 3-point Saka. And that in total is 49 points lost in 4 game weeks through the wrong captaincy choice. And the thing is, had he nailed those picks, then the Gladiator with no Haaland and no Salah would have been 72nd in the entire world. 72nd. As it is, even with those abysmal captaincy choices, he still finds himself inside the top 26k. And that snapshot goes to show you all what is possible in this game. And that is what makes the League of Gentlemen so special. In this division, you find all sorts of styles. You'll find all manner of approaches. And in the world's greatest mini-league, you'll find the stories that bring this simple spreadsheet game to life. The other content creators out there will leave you thinking there's only one way to be one of the best losers. This uncontent creator wants more. I want to win this blasted game, and the only way to do that is to do things differently. And yes, it may already be too late for me this season, with the pressure rising on that game week 12 wildcard every week. But it's not too late for you. It's not too late for King Ding. It's not too late for Gladiator Glenn. And it might not even be too late for me. If the Gladiator can step into the arena and be so close to 72nd in the world, then so can you. So can I. Somebody out there has to finish this season as the world #1, and why shouldn't it be you? Why shouldn't it be me? All I know is that the person who does will be the one who has the cojones to make those big balls calls. And I hope that you go away from this video learning that it's alright to take chances and that there are other ways to success, because there are, and you can find them. And so, ahead of game week 7, may all your transfers be successes, may all your arrows be green, and may those FPL gods be in your favour. Infuse yourself with championship courage by hitting that subscribe button, and we will see you next time.
FPL Nightmare got me pulling out more, yeah. I'm the greatest football manager to ever grace the old armchair, but the FPL gods hate me, and no one seems to care that my points are only average and my ranking is not fair.